So a little bit about me. I'm a self-taught digital artist who started their art journey when I was 12 and now I'm 20, meaning I've been on this path for about 8 years. And when I first embarked on this journey, I had so much drive and passion to become the best artist I could be. And while I think I'm back on track now, I actually took a break from the ages of 15 to 18 because I hated art. I ended up progressing so much that I essentially had to start over from scratch, and this made me really sad and almost guilty because I let myself waste all of those years I put into mastering the craft of art. And so it really bothered me, and when people would ask me why I quit for so long, I would always tell them it was because of freaking art 101. As I said, I started my art journey when I was 12, and that would land me right in middle school. And back then, art was my entire personality. Every second of free time I had was dedicated to drawing. And in freshman year, I was so excited to finally take an art class. So in my high school, the way it worked was you chose 4 to 5 electives, and then you ranked them from your most desired to least desired. Their job was to put you in as many of your top electives as they possibly could. And so the higher grades got top priority when it came to choosing electives, leaving freshmen to more or less get the leftover classes and anything that was bottom of the barrel. In the end, I ended up getting banned in Spanish, but I wasn't able to take art because it was already filled up. Honestly, it was a blessing in disguise. I ended up learning that I loved Spanish and band probably more than I loved art. In fact, I went to college to be a Spanish teacher. So when it came to fill out my questionnaire for my sophomore classes, I put art at the bottom of my priority list. Don't get me wrong, I was still excited to possibly get into an art class, but at the same time, I wouldn't be as heartbroken as freshman year me was. But to my surprise, I actually got in. I was scheduled for 3rd period Art 101, and if only I knew the shit show that was about to be. First day of school rolls around and things are going pretty great. I walk into the art room and I was the only one there. I was alone in there for about 10 to 20 minutes, and I was starting to question whether or not I was in the right room. As I was pulling out my schedule to double check and make sure I wasn't in the wrong class, this old man walks in the room. Like, seriously, this man was so old. Remember that old lady who hated chocolate from SpongeBob? Yeah, this lady, she was more youthful than this man. Come to find out, he actually held the record for the oldest teacher in our state and had been on the news a couple of times to do interviews because of it. And without saying a word, he goes to his desk and sits there for 30 minutes. And at this point, I had so many questions. Like, where are the other students? Why isn't he handing out a syllabus? And did he go to school with Fred Flintstone? And finally, about 10 minutes left of class, a couple other kids walk in. About 5 to 7, I can't really remember. And when they walk in and sit down, he actually takes roll. This is where I found out that 3rd period art was a class set aside for kids who are in the special ed program, along with a couple other students who couldn't be put into the other classes due to overcrowding. And this doesn't seem like a problem, except the teacher was super biased? Ignorant? I'm not exactly sure of the right word, but if I were to explain it, he didn't see those kids as the same as he saw, say, me or the kids in the other class periods. So he didn't waste his time teaching us anything. He used 3rd period as a time to work on his own projects, and basically he just worked on his own endeavors while supervising us and letting us draw whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. This really bummed me out because not only did I want a class period set aside in my school day where I could actually draw and not get in trouble, but I wanted to actually learn different concepts from someone who knew what they were talking about instead of just trying to teach myself everything that I knew. For example, all the other classes were working on 1 and 2 point perspective, and I was left on my own accord to watch a YouTube video if I wanted to learn about it, instead of actually being taught in a class that he was supposed to be teaching. But we weren't allowed to use our phones, so I couldn't even watch the YouTube video in class. I was just left to draw horses, which is something I did a lot. This girl and her aide sat beside of me, and one day she handed me a picture of a horse that she drew and told me that she really liked my art and wanted to be friends. And so in return, I drew her a horse and gave it to her. After that, we spent basically every single day drawing horses back and forth with each other and talking. We actually became friends and even talked outside of class. If it wasn't because of her, I would have ended up hating this class before it got bad, which it sounds like it's bad already, but no, it gets a lot worse. Because just as I was starting to accept the fact that I wasn't going to learn anything in this class, I walk in one day and there's 4 boys sitting in the room. The teacher walks in late as usual, but this time he looks visibly upset. Apparently these boys had been in AE for a really long time, and at our school, AE wasn't just a classroom that was isolated from the rest of the school. It was a completely different location with different teachers and curricula. That meant them coming back to school was essentially them transferring to a different one completely. Anyways, I guess the art teacher was upset because now he had quote-unquote real students, I guess, as he saw us. And so that meant he can no longer use his time to work on his own projects and actually had to teach us something. And I guess he took out his frustrations on us because after that day, a switch flipped in him. He walks in and immediately hands us a piece of paper and tells us that today was going to be our first test. He wanted us to draw a cityscape using 2-point perspective and turn it in at the end of class. Only he never taught our class 2-point perspective, and these boys haven't even been in art class for a day. Needless to say, we all failed. He would also give us prints of drawings that he did and would ask us to trace it. Like, just trace it directly on the print, like not even on a separate sheet of paper, just trace over it. Those next 2 weeks were essentially us walking into the class and tracing over a drawing that he had done in the past. And then we would turn it in and he would hand us a piece of paper and ask us to do a test over a concept that we had never been taught before. Then failing and getting lectured the next day over how we obviously didn't try hard enough, and we would obviously fail this class and also fail at life itself, seeing as half the class had already been in AE long term. And yes, he did say this. My grade went from a perfect 100 to a 20 in those 2 weeks alone. And my counselor even went so far as to pull me inside and ask about what was going on. Our school was really small, and so our counselor knew more or less the grades and behaviors of each student. And she was concerned because I had never made a bad grade before. I ended up relenting to her and telling her about the awful treatment that the art teacher was giving our class. I was on the verge of tears before she stopped me and told me that she'd take care of it. 2 days later, my grade was changed to a 97. I was so relieved and happy, thinking that all this was over and it was going to go back to, if not a normal art class, just what it had been before. But it only gets worse from here. But in storytime video fashion, I'm gonna have to leave you guys on a cliffhanger, just because this is going to be way too long if I encompass it into just one part. So I'm gonna split it up into 2 parts. That just gives you even more of a reason to like and subscribe so that you can come back next Friday and watch the second part. Or if you want to be really awesome, like my patron Rattled the Second, you can go support me on Patreon because it's already uploaded there. As for that, that's all I have for you today. So I'll see you guys next week.